To say that Destiny has been on a roller coaster over the past 3 weeks would be an extreme understatement. It all started with a sense of shock, coming in the form of an announcement that Destiny 2 support was ending, along with impending layoffs for some within Bungie. But that shock soon turned to anger. Players were pissed. They were pissed at Pete, they were pissed at Sony, and they were taking aim at anything that landed Destiny in this spot, even Marathon.
I want Destiny. I want Destiny 3. And Marathon, if I have to fucking bury you myself to send that message, I shall.
But what we're seeing this week from the Destiny community in an attempt to send a clear message to Sony has been nothing short of incredible. The players want Destiny 3, and if this week's results are any indication of how serious they are, they might actually stand a chance. If you're new here and would like to help support the channel, please consider hitting subscribe as we dive into the past and present with Destiny. Since we need a bit of context, let's travel back about 3 weeks to May 21st. And you may recall seeing this message hit the social channels that Bungie would be effectively ending active development of Destiny 2, and June 9th's Monument of Triumph update would be the final live service content update for this franchise. Bungie also simultaneously released the Monument of Triumph update blog that read like a veritable top shelf, no holds barred, give the players exactly and everything they've ever wanted before signing off type update. The director would be returning, raid and dungeon weapons and armor had been reworked, new abilities would be introduced, the portal was being completely overhauled, along with changes to the Crucible, Gambit, and we even saw the return of the Sparrow Racing League as a permanent addition to the game. This update was truly a studio's last hurrah to put their project into an evergreen state before moving on, and as we'll see a little bit later, it was a resounding success. However, as Bungie's announcement hit the gaming world and that shock began to set in, news also began to trickle out about the past and future of Destiny. Forbes' Paul Tassi reported on May 22nd that with Destiny 2 gone, no Destiny 3 is coming. And Tassi's piece also confirmed details that were reported on the day before by Bloomberg's Jason Schreier, stating that Bungie plans layoffs after ending Destiny 2 development. Now, between both of these reports, we learned of the true scope of how things had fallen apart at Bungie. Now, the long and short of it was that Destiny 3 was not in production. It had been pitched many times internally, but after the final shape, Sony did not want to spend that money. No other projects had been greenlit or were in development even outside of Destiny, and that Destiny 2 resources had already been moved over to Marathon, which was entering its second season. Furthermore, Bungie, which had roughly 800 employees on staff, was about to be entering into a period of significant layoffs, especially since the company was attempting to hold on to its team despite the heavily reduced content schedule post the final shape. Paired with the news from earlier in May that Sony had reported a $765 million impairment loss due to Marathon underperforming and essentially Bungie underperforming, this really was the perfect storm. However, for the staff within the studio, almost none of them knew about the end of Destiny 2 until the announcement was actually made. Tassi later reported that some staff working on June's Emote update did know, but were prevented from sharing the news. And this entire situation was one of disbelief and betrayal. As someone that once worked in the land of big corpo business, I've been there, and I've experienced the anguish firsthand when you know that some of the people that you've gotten to know and you've worked shoulder to shoulder with over the past 5 to 10 years are about to have their lives turned upside down, and you want to give them a heads up because it's the decent thing to do. You know, to give them some idea of what's about to happen, but you can't because legal has jammed a bunch of documents in front of you spelling out how bad your life will become should you even make a slight hand gesture at anyone that's about to be let go. It's brutal living and working like that, and I expect that's how those that were in the know at Bungie must have felt. Of course, as the reality set in about Destiny's future and the shock turned to anger, we all knew what was about to be the target: Marathon. Now, not only was Marathon underperforming, it was seeing far less players than Destiny 2, which as a franchise was actually in the midst of one of its worst content droughts in its history. Plus, players had since learned that Bungie had also shifted resources over to Marathon prior to this Destiny announcement, essentially ravaging one to allow the other to live. But the irony was, even after the shifting of resources and staff, Marathon was still being outshined by Destiny 2. The reality was that the game with less players was living on while the franchise that was loved by millions was being axed to make way for the new. This set off the intense Destiny versus Marathon debate. You see, at its peak, Marathon hit an all-time player count on Steam of 88,337 players back on March the 6th, and then slowly fell off to anywhere between 10 to 13,000 players per day. Again, this is on PC, so not including consoles. More recently, on June the 3rd, Marathon ran a free week promo that did see an uptick in player counts, hitting roughly 40,500 on that same day, June 3rd. And it's important to mention that during that same time, Marathon also dropped their Season 2 content. So that 40,000 was a result of being able to play the game for free and the new content that was also released at the same time. Not that Marathon is a particularly bad game, I mean it's fine, but it entered into a niche extraction market at a time when other heavyweights were already established, along with the new strong upstart Arc Raiders, which launched prior to Marathon and hit an all-time peak on Steam of close to 500,000 players before dipping down to its new norms of anywhere between 40 and 50,000 player highs on PC per day. But even on its best day, Marathon can't come close to Destiny 2 numbers, which saw its all-time peak hit nearly 317,000 players on Steam back in February 2023. But more recently, in June 2024, we can see that with the launch of the extremely popular Final Shape update, it nearly matched its all-time peak player counts, hitting 314,000 players on Steam alone. We also know that, according to 𝗶𝗄𝐽, again over at Forbes, Destiny is usually around a 4-to-1 ratio between console and PC. So that's 4 console players for every 1 PC player. And with a ratio like that, it means that the Final Shape saw up over 1 million peak player counts, which is incredible. So as players, you start to compare these two, and you sit here staring into the abyss in total disbelief at Sony's boneheaded decisions and Bungie's mismanagement, looking at a game in Marathon that is essentially flatlined in terms of player numbers, showing little to no growth, and recently not landing very well with its Season 2 launch. All the while, the older, more established Destiny 2 continued to outperform it in terms of players, had a much stronger and established fan base, and was nestled into its very own corner of the live service looter-shooter genre, while Marathon was actually attempting to go up against industry heavyweights in a market and genre that Bungie was not entirely familiar with. The clear choice for Sony would be to invest the dollars into maintaining Destiny while working on the next evolution of the franchise, whether that's Destiny Infinity or Destiny 3. Either way, it's going to cost them hundreds of millions to make, but time and time again, Destiny fans have showed up and supported the franchise they love, making the Destiny investment route the safer choice, versus what Sony and Bungie did, which was to spend a reported $250 million in developing Marathon, stuffed it into a crowded lineup, and much to no one's surprise, it's underperforming, leaving both Sony and Bungie in a tough spot. You see, on one side, these companies have poured millions into Marathon. They're clearly backing it, while Bungie has also been repositioning assets and resources internally within the studio to do the same, but you've still got this Destiny thing hanging out there, along with a fan base that, when motivated, will show up. Clearly, the Destiny fanbase was not taking the decision to shelve their beloved franchise laying down. The Change.org petition was set in motion for Sony to develop Destiny 3, now amassing almost 380,000 signatures. Sony-backed events, like their State of Play, were swamped with Destiny 3 emotes, which you can see here. I mean, the chat is just simply overwhelmed with players spamming them left, right, and center. And this post hit Twitter, showing chat during the God of War 𝗏𝗏 gameplay reveal, and as you can see, it's Destiny 3 everywhere. However, for the Destiny community, the real prize was circled on their calendar, June the 9th, the launch day for Destiny's last content update, Monument of Triumph, as players organized a server slam, with some stating that it was their goal to log in on that day and eclipse Marathon's all-time highest player counts on Steam. And boy did they. Day one of that server slam saw Destiny's PC player counts top 165,000, more than doubling Marathon's all-time peak, while day two for Destiny saw it maintain its momentum, hitting nearly 168,000, which, for a franchise that had effectively been axed, these are insanely high numbers, far surpassing the goal of passing Marathon, as they nearly doubled them. In fact, the response was so intense it pushed Destiny 2 up to #1 on the US Steam charts for top sellers, along with it taking the #2 spot on the worldwide Steam charts, where, as of the time of this recording, it still remains. Even a few days after the planned slam and the launch of Destiny's final update, Steam player counts are still easily crossing the 100,000 mark and show no signs of it slowing anytime soon. In fact, many players were met with this message when they attempted to log in during the slam. Due to increased traffic, login services to Destiny 2 are currently being throttled. Please stay on this screen until login services stabilize and you are logged into Destiny 2. Following the launch of the Monument of Triumph update, we saw Forbes' Paul Tassi calling it a beautiful, tragic ending, also going on to say that he deemed this the everything update, as by some miracle, Bungie made essentially every Destiny 2 activity worth playing again, from its top-tier raids to even patrol mode, giving the addition of relevant, appealing rewards and fun alterations. Now, of course, the main draw to this final update is loot, and lots of it. Over 100 guns with some new additions are now in the game. Armor has seen old sets refreshed with new bonuses. There's a massive number of ornaments here as well, resulting in an update where players feel rewarded for their playtime. So while Bungie's core franchise was saying its last goodbyes, how did the other game fare that they're banking their future on? Well, not so good. As you can see here, Marathon ranged anywhere from 25,000 players down to lows of 6,500 players on Steam, which are hardly inspiring numbers, especially while the game they announced is over was out there boasting 100,000 plus players. If anything, just on player counts alone, this should be an easy decision for Sony. The support is there for Destiny, and the play is to immediately start fielding project pitches from inside Bungie on how to begin production on the next iteration of Destiny. Again, it's not going to be cheap. It's going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars. But for Sony, a company that ponied up a reported $400 million, possibly more, for Concord, if they allowed Bungie to cook and do what they do best, a Destiny 3 sounds like a much smarter investment than what Sony did, invest in a game that launched and then was retired in the span of 2 weeks. On a more personal note, as someone that started his YouTube channel years ago by posting Destiny content, much of it never seeing more than 100 views, I was there when Destiny first came to life. I PvP'd, I raced my Sparrow, I carried the orb in King's Fall, I looted the Vex Mythoclast, and I got lost more than a few times in the Abyss. But also along the way, I made friendships that have endured long past my Destiny days. It's been a part of the gaming landscape for so long, I can't imagine a world without Destiny in it. And to see it end like this, it doesn't feel like the respect this franchise deserves. The hope is that Sony will somehow come to their senses. They'll see the player counts, they'll see the top sellers charts, they'll feel the community backlash, and somehow warm to the idea of a Destiny 3, even if it only appeals to their bottom line and investor interest, because Destiny and its continuation is still making far more financial sense than pumping millions more into Marathon, only to see it slowly bleed out. Will Destiny 3 ever come to be, and what's to be done about Marathon? Drop a comment and let's get a discussion going. If you happen to like the video, consider hitting subscribe and ringing the notifications bell. I'd also like to say thank you to these awesome channel members who allow me to continue making content just like this. Until the next one, this is 𝐓𝐿𝐴𝐻𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿 signing off.